Hey everyone, welcome to Creative Retail Talks. I'm excited to be visiting with Rich Ezra today, the Chief Marketing Officer of Lion Brand Yarn.
Hi, this is Clint O'Rear. Thanks for joining the Creative Retail Talks podcast today, where we will be discussing the latest in life, business, and retail.
Rich has been in the creative industry for many years, and we're going to talk about that journey and what's going on at Lion Brand Yarn and get some great insight and wisdom from Rich Ezra. So looking forward to talking to you today, Rich. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, like I said, I know right now you're with Lion Brand, but let's go back a few years and tell me about your journey through the creative industry, kind of back from the beginning.
Sure. So I was in a family business, and as you probably know, with a lot of family businesses, I started in about 1995, and it was sort of like baptism by fire. You know, they put you out there, and it was really interesting time because it was a company called 𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗧. And when we started, we were really doing a lot of knickknacks, right? Like you'd find pens made of corn, lighters, printing, anything you could do to make money. And then what happened was we started with these pens, these markers called Zig. And, like they say, timing is everything, right? The scrapbook industry was just hitting its thing, right? Then in LA, through the LDS community, and it was just exploded, and then built a whole program through stickers and paper. And, the rest is history, right? And the amount of the people you met, the passion, and there's something when things are going great, it's wonderful. But in the craft industry as a whole, it's just a very passionate and dedicated group of people. Honestly, it's like I've been in other industries, and I'll tell you, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, that scrapbook boom was amazing, and it's interesting. I've been in the industry for 21 years. From what I've seen, I think it is the biggest trend that has shaped the industry over the last couple of decades. Would you agree?
I would completely agree. I mean, we've seen things like with Elmer's and the glue, right? And we've seen a couple of things, but in terms of longevity, in terms of creating and paving a new path, absolutely. Anything like it since.
Yeah, and obviously we're off of the peak, but still so many things in our industry that have been influenced from that trend. So yeah, very powerful trend. That's awesome that you got to be on the ride with that for a while.
A lot of fun. And like I said, you know what? You meet a lot of great people along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So somewhere along there, I believe Wilton bought 𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗔𝗬𝗪. Is that right?
That's correct. It was Wilton bought 𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗔𝗪𝗪, and there was another company called Skein company called Dimensions. And Dimensions at the time had those, if you're familiar with those perler beads, there were these beads that are actually fused together to create designs. Yep. Skein was a complementary piece because they had brought a fashion aspect to the scrapbook industry. And Wilton, as we all know, Wilton, right? They are the name in cake decorating. So
absolutely.
It was definitely a lot of fun seeing all these creative companies coming together. I mean, our meetings, I'd say some of the best meetings I've had is watching all this talent in one room. It was incredible.
I bet that was fun. I bet that was a lot of fun.
And nothing like it. Nothing like it.
So what was the culture change like going from family company 𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗧 to more of a conglomerate under Wilton? And what was the culture change like when that happened?
I think the biggest difference is, we were very fortunate that we were allowed to do what we do well. But if you ask me, the biggest change was more of the reporting aspect, right? Because when we were just with 𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗧, we weren't having official board meetings. We were making presentation. But basically, like I said, is I went from college to business school because, I wasn't talking about terms like what is our EBITDA, our contribution margin. I mean, you had a whole nother education. I mean, I'm very thankful for it. And you learned a lot. But it really was. I like to say 𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗧 gave me that initial education, and then working with Wilton and all that was just an incredible experience.
Yeah, you got your real world MBA, huh?
And you know what? That's the best MBA.
Absolutely. No, it definitely is. It definitely is. So you did 𝗧𝗧𝗪𝗧, then Wilton, and I think I saw somewhere along the way you took a little stop for some candy. Is that right?
Yeah, so I went to work at a company called Astor Chocolate for a few years. I had a non-compete at the time, and I wanted to try something different. And it's hard not to migrate towards chocolate, right?
Right.
It's very broad consumer base. But what was really fun is they did a lot of private label and a lot of fun things. And we really, really developed something. We developed a line there. It's one of the most fun things we ever did called Moody Bars. And they had emoticons based on what your mood was. So if you were feeling tired, we had a mood bar with a little caffeine in it, right? Feeling sweet. So whatever your mood was, and it just took off like wildfire because it's similar in a way to the craft industry that whenever there's an emotional connection to a product or category, you almost follow the same protocol really and start developing and creating around it because you're trying to tap into the emotional center.
Right.
And it was a great experience. I mean, wonderful people. Was there for 4 years. And I would say the only downside is definitely gained more weight at that job. I did at EK Success. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Trying some of the samples, right? You had to know what you were selling.
Well, because every time a new flavor come out, there'd be a tasting and the chef would bring stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know, about 3, 4 o'clock. That is when I get my hunger pangs. And yeah.
Yes, I'm so with you. That's like the weak zone, right? Kind of that 3 to 5. Like if food's in front of you, it's going in.
It's painful. Yeah.
So that's interesting, the commonality between the creative industry and the candy industry. So that emotional connection. Any other similarities that you saw or what made it different also?
I'll tell you, the difference probably is, you know, in that particular industry, right? You were dealing with, like, we have brands in our industry. But our brands are more, I would say, cottage industry brands that people know. Probably the most is probably even maybe Cricket right now, right? Who doesn't know what a Snickers bar is? Competing against not just 800-pound gorillas, but 1,800-pound gorillas. So we came up with this whole campaign called the Public Display of Confection. So our whole thing was about how do we bring the fun and the personality, as I alluded to earlier with the Moody bars. So for us, what was really neat about it is you have to learn to compete. And when you're competing against those guys, and mega advertising budgets. I mean, just think about it. Find me a person in the world that doesn't know what a Hershey bar is. Right. Then you're competing for shelf space. So we had to find unique and innovative ways to sort of carve our niche. That's probably, I would say, the biggest difference is we have very strong brands, but those brands are really known to the true hobbyist.
Right. No, that's a good point. So then you made your way back into the creative industry with Line Brand. So I'm curious, before we talk about Line Brand, any lessons that you learned from being out of the industry for a few years that kind of gave you a fresh look at things coming back into the industry?
I think the biggest lesson that I found is that it's really about, you know, obviously following the consumer and really understand. If you have a pulse on the consumer, it's great, but also what really makes the difference is, I always say, it's kind of like, I'm going to use a football analogy, and I apologize, I'm a big sports fan, but you really got to solidify both sides of the line, right? The offensive line, the defensive line. You know, running all these fancy plays are wonderful, but you can't unless you have that foundation, right?
Right.
I think, you know, the one thing I really took back is coming back into the industry is how do we build that sort of foundation and establish it? And then we can do all the wonderful things that we want to do, right? Creative marketing and everything. But there's that blocking and tackling piece that really has to be addressed. And it's really ironic how many companies miss that. Yeah,
for sure. Well, I know not everyone is a sports fan, but I just want you to know, as a former offensive lineman and defensive lineman, I appreciate you using that analogy.
you guys are what makes it go.
Great analogy. All right, man. So let's talk about Line Brand. Obviously, a company that is a good friend of mine. Love you guys and what you're doing. Let's first talk about your role, and then we can talk about some things with the company. So, Chief Marketing Officer, for those that don't know what a Chief Marketing Officer does, what does a CMO do, and what does your role at Line Brand look like right now?
I like to say basically is, the Chief Marketing Officer, you're really in charge of the sell-through aspect. You become almost a chief customer officer in a way, right? Because really understanding what the customer wants and really being able to translate that into commercially viable opportunities for the company. But look, the salespeople, and you know this better than me, right? They're going to sell in the product, but you need to come in with a sell-through strategy, because you can't just assume not every product, it would be wonderful it was, you put on the shelf and it just goes. You've got to find a way to create that attention. Have, a customer, and you know this better as well as I do, has 3 seconds to walk down the shelf. Let's just talk on there, right? What's going to grab their attention? Is it color? Is it messaging? You have to understand all those variables and put yourself and say, how am I going to address that sweet spot? Where can I do that? Do I have the right price point? What is it that's going to get them to stop, pick up the product, and engage with it, and have that sort of craft conversation we like to say at shelf?
Yeah, definitely. And Rich, one of the first times you and I met, you shared that with me about the chief marketing officer and the marketing team's role is to drive sell-through. And that was music to my ears, first of all, and also just, I think, a brilliant nugget of wisdom. So for anyone on marketing teams out there, great strategy to consider and think about that. How do you drive sell-through? Once product is sold into a retailer, great philosophy of now let's drive sell-through with what we're doing on the marketing side. So love that philosophy that you use, for sure. All right, man. So the next thing I want to talk about, and I'm excited to have this conversation, Lion Brand is so engaged with the community and involved in so many positive things. I feel like I see a new press release come across almost every week with something really cool that you guys are doing. So let's give everyone an overview of those projects. So I'll let you go in whatever order you want, but just kind of share with us the things that you guys are doing to engage with the community and the consumer, and especially some of those things that have a social background behind it.
This is something that I sort of inherited, so this philosophy. So like from the ownership on down, their whole thing is, there's an expression we say in Hebrew, it's called tikkun olam. It means to repair the world. Ownership as a whole is not just really satisfied with profits over principles. It's kind of the reverse. And they want to be able to give back because they feel like they've been fortunate and blessed to be in a situation like that. They also have a responsibility to give back to the community in so many ways. So there is a multitude of charities we work with. I'll just list some of them, and it doesn't mean the other ones aren't as important, right? But we do something called 𝗧𝗔𝗞𝗘𝗔𝗪𝗦, which is sort of this, started by David Blumenthal, who is our executive president of the company, former CEO. His daughter Shira started this company because she was bullied at a young age. And you know what? It really, when you hear her talk, and I know you've met her, it comes through very authentic because it is authentic. And so for us, we're not doing it because we really want to say, hey, look at us, we're doing this. We're doing it because it just feels like the right thing to do and what we need to be doing. And that sort of permeates throughout the whole company about giving back. And with 𝗧𝗔𝗞𝗘𝗔𝗪𝗦, Shira just recently did, I think it was a 24-hour telethon, or hackathon, I should call it. She's been calling it a telethon, hackathon, where she had all these guests from Vanna White, etc., raising money for It Gets Better, which is a very prominent LGBTQ community. We've done things regarding Black History Month. We have things going on for mental health awareness. We partner with Mental Health America. You know, the one thing we look at is who hasn't been impacted. We talked about the pandemic. Who hasn't been impacted? Whose mental health hasn't been impacted by what's been going on? It hits really hard to these people. And when you hear the stories and what they do, I have to tell you, with all the chaos, and they say the country's divided and all this stuff, you talk to these people who work in these organizations and you realize the world's in a better place. And we just feel very blessed to be part and associated with it. I mean, going through this aspect, which is not what we call in the traditional marketing channels, right? You meet some of the most special people you've ever met in your life, and you hear stories that will just bring you to tears. And then you look at yourself and, it says, I'm doing the right thing with my life, because I feel like I'm doing right. Yeah, listen, we're going to sell yarn, there's going to be trends and ebbs and flows, but to be able to give back and to see the impact that someone like Shira, for example, has had on all these people's lives, and you read these letters, you just realize we're really a part of something special. And this is really what's special about Lion Brand, more so because look, anybody can come into yarn, make products, and we happen to make some damn good products, but at the end of the day, this says a lot about the character of the company as a whole, and it's what probably I'm most proud of.
That's awesome. And when I saw the press release go by about what you're doing with Mental Health America, I thought the same thing. What a perfect time to be supporting mental health in our country, because I agree. I think there are so many people coming out of the pandemic where that's going to be one of the biggest things they deal with in the next couple of years. And, I know we've talked prior to this conversation, but just one of the things I'm so proud to be part of this industry about right now is just the impact it's having on people's mental health and ability to deal with the stress and anxiety that has come with the last 12 to 15 months. So I think that's great that we get to be part of it, something like that is truly impacting people's lives right now.
We're very lucky. I'll tell you that, Clint, we're very lucky.
Yeah, we definitely are. We definitely are. There's a product that when I saw it, I thought, first of all, brilliant. And second of all, what a perfect product to help bridge some of those divides that are out there in society. So tell us a little bit about skein tones and what Lion Brand is doing with that and how that's used for dolls.
So we're very lucky in that we have a very passionate consumer base. And one of our consumers, and a lady we worked with who's just a brilliant crafter, but a better human being. Let me say that. Her name is Aniqua. And she felt there was a gap in the market. She makes these dolls for various skin tones. In the spirit of inclusivity, she's like, there isn't anything out there like this. So when she came to us, we said, this is a no-brainer. The first thing we said is, why hasn't anybody done this?
Right.
We looked at ourselves and like, we're part of the problem. We should have done this. So we said, let's bring out this program. And the reaction was overwhelming. There was articles and people. I mean, I couldn't believe the amount of coverage that they got and cast the light. And I was so happy for her because she started this, for the goodness of her heart to be able to do that and feel something that's missing in the marketplace. And people got to see what the person we know and how special she is. And now you have all these retailers will be picking up the program, which is just great. But I always tell people, I said, you know what? If you focus on the messaging and you do things for the right reasons, the sales are always the byproduct of that. We always look, how much money can we make? It's not really the case. You really got to set yourself up and really say, does this fit into who we are as a company? And if it does, the sales come.
Yeah, and I see Lion Brand live that out just every day. And you guys do a great job of letting the sales and the business be the byproduct of living out your values. And that's great to see.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I mean, I don't know if we're going to get a chance to chat about it if we have time, but one of the things we're really even excited about is the hottest thing maybe we've ever had in terms of pre-press is a product called Schitts Creek, a little show, TV show.
That's where I was going to go next. Yeah,
all right.
I got hooked on that during the pandemic. So let's talk about that. That's so fun. So tell us about what's going on with Schitts Creek.
So for those of you who don't know, Schitts Creek is a show, right? It's based on the Rose family. It was created by a gentleman named Dan Levy. Dan Levy's father, we all know, if you know Eugene Levy, who's been an actor, has been in many movies, from American Pie, before that, other movies, comedic actor. Incredible cast, incredible story, fascinating. So we all, obviously, like you, I started during that pandemic binge watching, right? I started watching the show and I'm like, this is brilliantly written. And the nice thing is it provided levity at a time when we all did. And so when we thought about one of our designers, her name is Jen Van Sater, she came to us and said, you know, it'd be really great is if we could tie yarn to this. Because if you look at all of David's costumes and garments or what he wore, so we said, let's try it. Let's go for it. Because one of the things we like to say is that, there is no bad ideas, right? So we have a very open environment, right? So people would come up and say, so we said, let's try it. So we started testing, we started playing. We're like, this could be something. We got to meet the people at Schitts Creek. And first of all, their values are just absolutely incredible. And some of the most wonderful people I ever worked with. And so we signed this partnership and we said, great, let's kind of now test the waters, tease it out there with it. Oh my God, wear daily. And the funniest thing is, I tell the joke, I said, one of our customers, when I saw a post and I posted about it, the chief counsel liked it. I'm like, am I in trouble?
Yeah, that's always a little scary.
Yeah. We had a buyer tell us today that she had 5 people from departments that don't even touch yarn that said, I hope you're putting this in. And we're just like, we're really onto something here. And, look, it's very easy right after the fact to say, I knew it was going to be this big. I'm going to tell you, full disclosure, shocked at the level of enthusiasm that we had. We did it because we thought it was a really fun program, make a little money, send it out. It is beyond our own expectations.
Wow, really. That's so fun.
And we haven't even shipped the product yet. And the interesting thing, and I'll give you a little secret, we're in July 19th, when we release it out to consumers, we're going to run a contest. Well, consumers pick the colors they want to name it because they're so passionate about this show and about this character. And, to be able to hit the nerve of the country and be able to do something like this, it's just brilliant. Just absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And what's interesting is I'm thinking about the things we've been talking about. That kind of goes back to what you were talking about with the chocolate, where you're tying into emotions. With Schitts Creek, I think you hit an emotional chord with a lot of people that got connected to that show. And so, yeah, man, that y'all nailed it on that, and great home run there. It's going to be fun to see where that goes once it hits the market.
I appreciate that. When you have a great product and great people to work with, like I said, somehow it just all comes together when you have a lot of good people aligned in the same place.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's a fun one. That's another one. I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh. The Rich and his team are just nailing it right now. That's great stuff. So let's talk about trends, kind of more general. What trends do you see emerging right now that you think will influence makers, knitters, people doing crochet over the next couple of years?
I'll tell you where I think we're really going to see. Look, I can talk to you about trends of this yarn or this garment, but those things have a 3 to 4 month life expectancy in the right. But what I'm really seeing now is this heightened emphasis on education and what I call edutainment. So what we did is we started a lot of these virtual classes. We happen to have done it with a company called Michaels. We had launched it, which you're very familiar with, right? And it's just been incredible to see all these people wanting to learn, but they want to learn in a fun way, right? So we continue to find innovative solutions for education, innovative solutions for how to read a pattern, because we've held to sort of these very conservative beliefs. This is how education should be, right? You sit in the classroom, somebody teaches you, you follow a pattern, and it sort of has this, it's the way learning always was, whether in school. And now what we're seeing, whether it's crafts, whether it's auto mechanic, whether it's, school, we all know this. I don't know about you, but when I am relaxed, when I'm laughing, when I'm enjoying myself in a calm state, it is much easier for me personally to process information and absorb than it is when you have sort of anxiety or stress. And I think we're trying to tap into, as we talk, to use that emotional center of the consumer and get them into that place where it's a lot of fun. So we're trying to bring a fun aspect to the education. And we have an instructor, his name's Darren, and he has just, it's one of those people that you're like, whatever he says, I'm listening. Got that sort of engaging voice, and it's not intimidating, and he's rooting you on, and you feel like you've got somebody here that wants to see you succeed. It's just amazing. So when you ask me about trends, I think the more we can educate the consumer, but do it in a way where they feel, and the more pride they take in. The other thing I'm seeing is a lot more people are selling what they're making, right? So are you following Etsy? And I'm sure you followed this the last year. So the amount of makers that are out there is more than any time I've ever seen. Look, or maybe it's just more visible. Let me say that. Maybe they were always there, but now they're trying to commercialize what they're doing. So it's like, we're seeing so much more within the craft industry. This entrepreneurial spirit is really rising. So giving them the opportunity, and speaking of education, helping them learn how to sort of take their craft to the next level has just been incredible. One thing Wilton did really well all those years was when you ask a retailer who has the best education program, it was always Wilton, right?
For sure.
They were sort of the gold standard.
Yep.
And we're seeing all these other companies finally waking up and saying, you know what? Education is out there right now. We got consumers wanting to learn new things. They've had a lot of time and they just want to better themselves. And I think it changed. This whole pandemic really, really launched that. Everyone I talked to figured out how to learn something new, whether it was fixing something or, making, knitting, crocheting. It's unbelievable. So that was the one, again, to the silver lining out of that whole horrible situation.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and the great thing is, obviously one of the trends that emerged out of this is Zoom and video conferencing and video learning. So now it's easier than ever to provide that education. And I've been amazed, you referenced it a minute ago, how popular the Zoom online classes have been and the kind of response and engagement that those are getting. So, used to with the Wilton program back in the old days, they had to have an instructor personally go to every store that had the class, right? Or to teach a store associate how to do it. Now, you can get 1,000 people on a Zoom and be teaching them new things in 30 minutes and reach 1,000 people that in the past would have taken you a lot longer and a lot more investment to do the same thing.
Yeah, I would say on technology, we all went from 0 to 100.
Absolutely.
3 couple seconds. I don't know about you, but just a little sidebar is like trying to teach my mom and dad how to use Zoom was a whole other experience, by the way.
Yes.
I still need to work on. It definitely tests your patience. They've got it now. Wow, that was a process.
And I will say some of the funniest videos I've seen through the pandemic have been all the ones of all the funny things about people on video conference calls and the bloopers and, all those things. So pretty funny stuff. But you're right. We've gone from 0 to 100 in using video conferencing. In the past, to do a podcast, I would have flown up to New Jersey and we would have sat in a room and had a microphone and done this professional recording. Now we're sitting here on a video call and having a great conversation. And in a few minutes, we're back right at what we need to do at our desk. So yeah, it is really transforming what we're doing in so many ways. And I especially love the impact it's having on education for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, let's shift gears. We're going to go personal now. So okay. Rich Ezra, the man. So one of the things that I like to do as I'm talking to people is just kind of hear about the values and principles that people have applied along their journey. And, we're not there yet, but we're heading towards becoming some of the older guys in the industry, right? We're not there yet.
Oh, sure.
We're middle-aged right now. But as you think about just, things that have impacted your life and your career, let me throw a couple of questions at you related to that. So one thing that is always fun to think about is just people that have had influence on us. And I haven't prepared you for any of this. So if you need a minute to think, no worries at all. But who would you say has had the most influence in your life and career? And what areas did they influence?
I really have to say when it comes to initially, right, it starts with the foundation, as I talked to earlier. So obviously my father, because the one thing he used to tell me all the time is, when you first start out, you're always trying to fit in. And he gave me these words, and I don't know if they were his original words, but I'm giving him credit for it. Let's just say that. He said, why fit in when you're born to stand out?
That's good.
I said, you know what? Don't try to be like, I'd be the best version of you. And I know it comes off very cliche, but the reality is we're all trying to fit into this mold when we get into corporate America, when the reality is you're actually doing yourself more of a disservice. So that really helped. And I would say I worked, with a gentleman called Jerry Levin, who was the CEO at the time. And one of the best, most brilliant people I've watched what he did. He was very quiet. I used to call him the Velvet Hammer because he would never yell, never raise his voice, never escalate, but you knew when things had to be done. So the way that he had that calming effect. And the one thing I learned is, and I'm still learning every day, by the way, is that
amen to that.
The more calm you are in the situation, the more impact your words have. And trust me, it's a day-to-day lesson. And, speaking of which, that's the one thing I would take away is I always say, we are all in a perpetual state of beta. One of the things I dislike the most is the word expert, because the truth is there's no such thing as an expert. Every day we're getting better. My expertise is like the weather in Florida. Wait 15 minutes, it changes. I've got to learn something new, right? On the social media landscape. So we're the eternal student, and we're constantly learning. And those that can continue to do that will be successful and continue to own their craft. And then lastly, I would say, honestly, I want to say something. I work with David. I'm not just saying that because my review's coming up. No, I'm kidding. David Blumenthal, when I first came, was one of the people that really just blew my mind because he has a certain charisma that he came in, and he was just very honest. But what I loved about him, he was one of the first CEOs that I've ever worked with, that when he was wrong, he would tell you his wrong. And he showed me that vulnerability and admitting when you're wrong is an incredible value. And you actually endear people more. There's this perception that, oh, you're the head. You can't show people that you've made a mistake. No, what people don't realize is when you do admit your mistakes, when you're vulnerable, when you share people, look, I could have done a better job on this, people will actually rally around you more because they see a human connection. And that's one of the things watching him for the last couple of years really just blew my mind.
Oh, that's great. That's great leadership that he's exhibiting there
Make
for sure.
Send him Kirk too. Clint. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. I'm kidding.
We'll make sure. I'll make sure I send that clip to him for you.
Just
okay? That's good stuff. So, all right. So let's say you're sitting across the table from someone who's 20 years behind you. I mean, you just shared some great lessons right there. But is there like one thing that, if you looked back on your career and your journey, maybe a mistake you made that you learned from? That's usually where we learn the best lessons, right? Or something that you were like, man, I nailed that, and I want to keep replicating that. So, what advice would you have? Any advice for someone that's coming up 20 years behind you?
And this is going to sound very simple, but I always say thank you is always in the budget. You don't realize the power of words. And, thanking people and just saying thank you makes the biggest difference in the world. I can't tell you through my career how many people just take that word for granted, and just be appreciative of everything that you go through. And look, the thing that I probably wish I would have done different is enjoy the successes more. Maybe you could say the same thing. I feel like I was on this go, 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 go mode. But sometimes to take a second, look back and reflect, wow, look what we've did, and enjoy the moments. At my wedding, I think it was actually my mom that said, take a second, stop back, look at all this that's going on, and really appreciate it. I don't know if it's endemic to our culture here in the States, Clint, I'm not sure, but I say this, enjoy every moment, enjoy it, because it's gone as soon as, right?
Yeah, for sure. No, that's great advice for those coming behind us, for sure. And I would say really the last 12 to 15 months have probably reinforced that, I think, for all of us. And, it's interesting, when I hit 50, I did about a year ago, a little less than a year ago. Yes. It changed my perspective somehow. Like I really, that's when I started thinking about a lot of the things that you're talking about, is, really stopping and enjoying the successful moments, and taking time to just look back and take in everything around you and the people around you, and the experiences around you, and to be thankful for them. So that's great advice, man. Really appreciate you sharing that. And my hope is that, someone that's 20 years younger than us will hear this and take that, and maybe they learn it 20 years before we did.
I thank you. I thank you for what you do, because obviously anytime you have an opportunity to take a platform to help people to improve themselves and do better. So kudos to you, man. And thanks for all you do.
Well, thanks, man. Well, hey, thank you for being with me today. It's been a great conversation. Wish you guys much continued success on everything you're doing with Lion Brand, and and all the things you're involved in with the community. So thanks for everything you guys are doing as well.
I appreciate you, Kurt. You
Okay, man. Have a great day.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation on the Creative Retail Talks podcast today. Be sure to visit our show notes page for more information on today's show. And if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, reach out to me at clint@creativeretailtalks.com. Creative Retail Talks is all one word. That email address will also be in the show notes. Hope you have a great day.